Salvati Discipuli. Today's video is the first lesson in Chapter 11 in Latin for the New Millennium, Volume 2, and we are going to learn another participle. Now, just as a review, remember that participles are verbal adjectives, so they function like adjectives, okay? They have case, number, and gender. What makes them verbal is that they also have tense and voice. There are four participles in Latin. There is the perfect passive, that's the first one you learned, okay? So that is here, the fourth principal part. There's also the future active, which you guys have also already learned. That is the fourth principal part with the um removed and then oros, ora, oram in there. The future passive participle, you're not going to learn until chapter 15. Actually, it's one of the last things you learn. So let's just kind of, don't worry about that one right now. And this chapter, you are learning the present active participle, okay? For the most part, the most generalized way of forming the present active participle is getting the present stem plus the endings ns, ntus, and we'll talk about that in a second. And for the most part, it translates blanking, okay? Remind yourselves that there is no such thing as the present passive participle or as the perfect active participle. The present active participle, which is what you are learning in this video, is the only one of the participles that is going to decline following the third declension adjective endings, okay? So all the rest of them follow the first, second declension adjectives. This is the only one that's going to follow the third declension. They follow the third declension adjective endings, which you've known from Latin 1, you've known since Latin 1. The only little difference here is that the ablative singular ending for the masculine, feminine, and neuter can be an E or a long I like you would expect it to be, okay? Now, let's talk specifically about how to form it, okay? The first, second conjugation verbs form the present active participle from the present stem plus an NS ending in the nominative or an NT ending in the genitive. You can generally remember this as the present participle has an int in its space, okay? So for example, parans, parantis, tenanes, tenentus, so on and so forth. Notice that you're going to get your base onto which you're going to add the rest of the third declension adjective endings from the genitive form. So it's going to be tenentus, tenenti, tenentem, so on and so forth, okay? For third conjugation, remember there is no vowel on the end of your present stem, so you have to add an E and then the ns, intis ending, like agens, agentis. And then for the third IO and fourth conjugations, you're going to add an IE plus the ns, intis ending. So capiens, campientis for a third IO, audiens, autientis for the fourth conjugation. And that's it. That's how you form the present active participle. After that, you just need to know how to decline the present passive participle, and that will be on the next slide. Before we do that, I do want to point out some of the irregular verbs. Now, we have spent a lot of time in Latin 3 learning irregular verbs. These are the irregular verbs that we have learned that have a present active participle. Remember that not all of the irregular verbs that you learn actually will be able to form a present active participle. The two notable ones that I want to point out is sum esse, okay, the verb to be, does not have a present active participle. Even though volo and nolo can form present active participles, like volens, volentis, wishing, nolens, nolentis, not wishing, malo, to prefer, does not have a present active participle, okay? Potens, potentis, coming from possum, meaning being able. Agens, agentis, from eo ire, meaning going. Ferenes, ferentis, meaning from pharaoh, meaning carrying, bearing, tolerating. Those are all the present active participles from some of the irregular verbs we've learned. And then the last thing I need to talk to you guys about is the deponents. the deponent verbs do have a present active participle. And I know that's a little frustrating for you guys because, of course, they shouldn't, because the whole point of deponent verbs is that they only have passive forms, and yet they also only translate actively. They have present active participles that translate actively. Okay, it's just one of those little things about, and one of the little things that keep you on your toes about the deponents. So I gave you an example of 3 deponent verbs. Deponents altogether can form the present active participle. So you just have to know that. Okay, so you will see deponents. Now, luckily, they also translate actively, so they shouldn't trip you up too much. Conor, conare, meaning to try, gives us conans, conantes, trying. This is new vocabulary in chapter 11, utains, utentis, coming from utor, which means to use or to enjoy. So here, utains, utentis, meaning using or enjoying. And then progredior, the present active participle is progrediens, progredientes, meaning proceeding. But really all of them can do it. So patiens, suffering, enduring. Partiens, dividing, so on and so forth, okay? The last thing you guys have to know from this video is how the present active participle declines, okay? And here you go. I give you the masculine, feminine, and singular, not neuter singular, the masculine, feminine, and neuter plural for the 5 cases. You can see we have our nominative, which is the same for all 3 genders. So agens can be, it can be a man doing or driving, a woman driving, or a thing driving, okay? It's the same, really, except for with the neuter law, obviously. The accusative has to be the same as the neuter singular, so it's going to be agens, whereas the masculine and feminine accusative can be agentum, okay? And then in the plural, again, agentia as opposed to agentes, but so on and so forth. Okay, copy down this chart, and then you are done with the notes for this video. I will see you in class, and please ask me any questions you need to, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Well,